Now, much has been written and reported about the very strange world of Scientology, usually when some high ranking member leaves the so called religion. And the latest person to do that couldn't be more close to the leadership, or at least he used to be. Ron Miscavige is the father of the leader of Scientology, David Miscavige. His account of his time in the Scientology is called Ruthless. Ron, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Sean.
Now, your family had been Scientologists for some time, including David, of course. And when he was around 16, as I understand it, he went off to join Sea Org. Could you explain what Sea Org is?
Yeah, okay. Well, the Sea organization, short would be Sea Org, would be equivalent to like the priesthood in the Catholic Church, or let's say in Buddhism, the monastery where the monks all carry on their activities.
Right, and
that's the organization, and they're the ones that work very closely with L. Ron Hubbard when he was alive, and that's what David wanted to do when he was 16. He was laying in bed one day when I came home from work, and he looked like he was pondering something, and I said, "Hey, what's up, man?" And he said, "Listen, Dad," he says, I don't want to go to school anymore. He says, "All the kids around me are taking drugs. I don't want to be part of that. I want to go and help L. Ron Hubbard, and I want to join the Sea Org." And I said, "Well, if that's what you want to do, I'll help you," because at that time I thought very highly of it, and I was only 17 years old when I joined the United States Marines, so I figured if that's his purpose, I'm going to do whatever I can to assist him, and I did.
Now, over the following 11 years, before you joined him in California, did you have much contact with him during that period?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we would write to each other, and if he had an opportunity, he'd call me on the telephone. Listen, when he was a little kid, and even up through that era, we were good buds. I mean, we got along great with each other, and he had a great sense of humor. Even as a little kid, he was quite a lovable little kid, and I enjoyed his company, and he did mine. So, yeah, we did get along, and we did communicate with each other.
And did you realize, though, how quickly he was rising up the ranks?
At the time, no. I knew that he would do well because he was a very bright person, a very charismatic, and I knew that no matter what he did in life, he was going to do well. But I did not think or actually predict that he would end up being the head of the entire Church of Scientology.
Now, you went to join him in Gold Base, which is in California, around 1985, 1986. I think L. Ron Hubbard had just died at that stage of the game.
Well, I joined the Sea organization in 1985 and immediately went to the Gold Base in Emmett, California. And L. Ron Hubbard died in January of 1986. That's that track record, to give it to you straight.
And so when you saw David in Gold Base, in this new situation, did it immediately become apparent that it wasn't father-son anymore?
Well, yeah, there was an incident that happened, Sean, where I immediately went to work in the music studio and was writing music, composing music, and performing and doing whatever I could to assist the technical films being done with the proper music track. And I come out of the studio one day, and I looked to my left, and there was David with his entourage. And I shouted across, I said, "Hey, Dave." And he turned and looked at me, and he gave me a look that I didn't have to have any words said to me. I knew that on that base, I was a staff member first and foremost, and I wouldn't be his father there. And that was the first inkling of it was like a harbinger of things to come.
Were you allowed to be his father in any set of circumstances?
Well, yes, I was. And there were times when he would just, maybe in his daily activities, if I were down in our mess area where we would eat food, sometimes he'd come out of the office where he was, and he would just shoot the breeze with me for a little while. And it was very friendly. But, by the way, he always referred to me as Ron. He didn't call me Dad. That was my title when I was there. I was a staff member, but there was that, that affinity that a father would have for a son or a son for a father. Still, in the early days, that was there.
What started to change it then?
Well, I think what started to change was this. And after L. Ron Hubbard died, I think David saw his opportunity to rise to the top. And there was an incident that happened with him regarding a severe asthmatic attack that he had, and he ended up in the Hemet Hospital in the emergency room. And one of his well, I guess you'd call it a new awareness of life. What he actually realized was this, and he told it to the person who took him to the hospital. He said, Paul, power is not granted, it is assumed. And that's what he did when L. Ron Hubbard died. He assumed the power and rose right up through the ranks and rose to the top and did whatever he could do in order to do that.
So then, after he'd had this asthmatic attack and had this epiphany, was his attitude towards you as his father dramatically different?
Well, I don't know if it was date coincident with that, but it gradually grew into, I was more Sea Org member and less a father as the years went by, and that denigrated into that severely over, well, the next 20-some years, you know.
Mm-hmm. For the 26 odd years you were in Sea Org, how many hours a week would you work on average, and how much were you paid for that?
Well, I would get up at 9 o'clock in the morning and have breakfast. We'd go to, there'd be a muster at 9:30, and in the mornings we used to study, and at 12 noon, we would go to lunch. 12:30 there was a muster, and then go to work till 5. We'd have dinner at 5, 5:30 another muster, and then work anywhere between 10 and 11 or 12 o'clock at night. And our weekly pay for that in the early days was $30 a week, and then maybe over the last 15 or 18 years turned up to be $50 a week, of which you'd get about $47 after taxes.
Were you allowed leave Seabase? Were you allowed free access to newspapers, telephones, that kind of stuff?
No to all of those. Your life was completely sequestered away from the life around you that existed in Hemet, California. You could not go off that base to go shopping. You had to buy things either at the canteen or buy it on the internet. I mean, there was a Walmart up the street, maybe 2 miles. You were just not allowed to go there. Your communication off the base or out to friends and family, if you wrote a letter, you had to have that letter checked by the security guards before they would send it out. If there was something in there that was not supposed to be said, you'd have to rewrite it, and they'd check it again. If you wanted to call somebody, if it were a business, you could call and just speak to the person. But if you spoke to friends or family, there would be a person listening in on the other end of the phone. Your life was completely controlled from morning till night.
So, Ron, when you finally decided to leave, could you just walk out, say, I'm leaving, and walk out the door, or did you have to kind of engineer it to get out of there?
Not a chance that you could just say, hey, I'm leaving, and they'd say, oh, here's a packed lunch, have a nice trip. That's not at all. We planned our escape for about 6 months, and I go into this in complete detail in the book. And I'm going to tell you something, Sean. When I read that escape story, I think to myself, good Lord, did we actually do that? Did we have to resort to it? And yes, we did. Yes, we did.
And we've done items on Scientology before, so people would be perhaps familiar with what happens to people when they leave Scientology, this disconnection, that all contacts cut off. In your case, as I understand, private investigators were watching you. But
I had 2 private investigators follow me for about a year and a half, and they were getting paid $10,000 a week to report back my whereabouts and what I did from 8 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night. And when they were finally caught, in the car, in the trunk of their car, they had about 5 handguns. There was 5 license plates from different states in America, a stun gun, an 18 caliber rifle, a 22 caliber rifle with a silencer fitted up to it, and over 1,000 rounds of ammunition. And if anybody wanted to get this information, they could write to the West Dallas Police Department in Wisconsin, and you can get that sent to you. It's public domain. You'd have to pay a fee, but you could get the interviews and everything of these guys who were following me.
Well, I wonder what they needed all that for. David did, though, buy you a house afterwards.
Oh, he didn't buy me a house after it. When I got out, I wrote to him and I said, hey, listen, man, I lived in that life for over 26 years. I've paid very little into Social Security. And, because of that, I get very little pension. I'm 76 years old. If you can give me a hand toward buying a house or getting some of these things, I'd appreciate it very much. And he gave me $100,000 so I could buy a house here, which was his share of his mother's inheritance, who died several years earlier. On the other hand, he spent almost $750,000 having me followed. So I guess one weighs out against the other. But I did appreciate getting the money very much, and I appreciate it now. So it's not like I'm, disregarding the fact that that was a very nice act that he did.
Notwithstanding, though, all the experiences you've had, you still maintain some belief in Scientology. You don't think it's just a business?
Well, Sean, there are aspects of Scientology that you can get. There's courses you can do. There's auditing you can get, which is another way of saying counseling. That if you do this when you first get in, these things do improve your life. They make you more capable, and your communication is enhanced. Your ability for relationships is enhanced. Maybe your job. You do gain abilities from doing this, but it has morphed into right now. It's primarily a fundraising organization that wants to buy more and more real estate to prove that it's expanding. Yet all that's expanding is its real estate holdings. It is not now what it was in 1970. It is not at all that.
The book is called Ruthless Scientology, My Son David Miscavige and Me. Ron Miscavige, thank you very much for talking to us.
Sean, very nice talking to you, and I appreciate you having me on.